It started with harmless notes. Or at least, that's what Sarah told herself at first. She found the first one on her windshield. "You looked lovely today." She thought it was a random compliment, perhaps someone being nice. But when more notes followed, "I saw you at the store," or "You left your bedroom light on last night," the unease settled in. Sarah lived alone. No one should have known these details. After weeks of torment, she installed cameras in her home to catch the culprit. That night, she went to bed with a heavy heart, certain she was being watched. When she woke, she checked the footage, heart in her throat. At 3:17 a.m., the camera in the living room flickered, just for a second. But in that second, she saw something, a figure, blurry, out of focus but undeniably there. It stood near the far wall, half concealed by shadows. Sarah's pulse quickened as she rewound the footage, zooming in on the figure. It was too tall, hunched over, and its limbs were grotesquely elongated. Even though it was blurry, she felt its eyes, empty sockets, boring into her. Her stomach twisted in fear. The figure didn't move. It didn't break into her home. It was already inside. She ran through the footage from the past few days and saw nothing. But last night, it was there, standing in her living room, watching, motionless for hours. She bolted out of her chair, pacing the room. The police wouldn't believe her. She needed more proof. But she couldn't stay here, not anymore. Before she could gather her thoughts, a noise from her phone made her jump. A text from an unknown number. "You left the back door unlocked tonight." Sarah froze. Her blood ran cold. She hadn't checked the back door before bed. She didn't waste a second. She grabbed her keys, intending to run for the car. But as she reached for the handle, her phone buzzed again. Another message? "Don't bother." Her heart hammered in her chest. The air felt heavy. Slowly, she turned toward the hallway, and there it was, the figure, no longer in the shadows of a video. It stood in the hallway, its head tilted to the side like it was studying her, its limbs twisted and too long for its body. The creature's face, or what passed for one, was stretched thin, with empty, gaping holes where eyes should be. A slow, raspy breath echoed through the narrow space between them. Sarah's mouth went dry. She took a step back, her mind racing. It hadn't moved yet. Maybe she still had time to escape. Her hand reached for the doorknob, but before she could twist it open, the figure twitched, its head jerking forward unnervingly fast. She let out a sharp gasp, stumbling backward. The creature's body creaked, like bones grinding against each other as it straightened. Its face contorted into something that resembled a grin, stretched too wide, too unnatural. Then it moved, not in slow, deliberate steps. In one sudden, horrifying lunge, Sarah bolted for the back door, her heart slamming against her ribs. She fumbled with the lock, her hands shaking violently, every second feeling like an eternity. Behind her, she heard the dragging, uneven footsteps, the creature. She finally managed to yank the door open and sprinted into the night, her breath coming in short, panicked gasps. The cold air hit her skin as she dashed down the driveway, her keys slipping through her trembling fingers. She swore under her breath, the creature's presence weighing heavily on her mind. But when she risked a glance over her shoulder, the hallway was empty. The figure wasn't there. She threw herself into the car and slammed the door, her hands fumbling to start the engine. When the car roared to life, she peeled out of the driveway, heart still pounding in her chest. She drove blindly, no destination in mind, just needing to get as far away as possible. Her thoughts raced, a mixture of disbelief and terror. How could it have been there? She checked her phone again, no new messages, no sign of the figure following her. The streets were empty, eerily quiet. Eventually, she pulled into a gas station, her fingers still shaking as she clutched the steering wheel. She needed help, someone to explain what had just happened. She glanced at her phone, debating whether to call the police. Would they even believe her? Taking a deep breath, she decided to check the footage one last time. Her hands trembled as she opened the camera app, rewinding to the moment she had fled the house. The living room was empty. She rewound again, all the way back to when she saw the figure standing in the hallway. Nothing. No creature, no shadowy figure, no evidence that anything had ever been there. Her stomach dropped. Had she imagined it all? The messages on her phone still stared back at her. "You left the back door unlocked tonight. Don't bother." She opened her messaging app, but the messages were gone. The unknown number had disappeared, leaving no trace. Her mind raced. What was real and what wasn't? She had seen the figure. She had felt its presence. And yet now there was nothing. Shaken, she decided to leave town for a few days, staying with a friend while she tried to make sense of it all. But the nagging feeling never left her. Every night, as she lay in bed, she felt those eyes, watching her from the dark,